Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Civil Discord, your weekly dose of radical curiosity. I am one of your hosts here, dressed a little bit more snazzy than I normally am, in my basic polo, like I just got off work and so forth. Here in the People's Republic of Texas, where it is so beautiful, such a gorgeous day. It's been a gorgeous week. Maurice Jones, the notorious BLG, and with me, again, here more often than I am out there, and I'm sure what is even more beautiful days than what I have here in the state of Texas is the supreme overlord of liberty, the great Amanda, out there in the People's Republic of California. Amanda, how's it going, and how is that weather out there?
It's going great. The weather's fantastic. I actually get to miss a heat wave. I'm so excited because I get to go to Chicago. I'm going to Chicago to talk about Machiavelli on Thursday, and there's going to be a heat wave that I am just going to completely skate over, and I'll be in my homeland, and it'll be wonderful.
Okay, so when you say heat wave, what do you mean by heat wave? Like highs of like 105?
No, although I have had those. This is a little heat wave. This is like going to get up to 93. So it's it's a
just
Mediterranean heat wave.
Okay.
It's a baby heat wave.
It's always crazy when I hear people talk about, oh yeah, heat waves coming through and this, that, or the other, and I'm like, what's y'all's definition of a heat wave? Because if it's not steady triple digits every single day, then that's not even a heat wave. And then I would say that's a typical summer in the state of Texas.
I mean, we have those, but they're rare. It's like me laughing when anyone complains about the wind or the humidity in California. Just stop talking. Stop talking. Yeah,
definitely. So we're talking about Machiavelli.
Yeah, I am talking about Machiavelli. Yeah, I almost, because we had a little bit of trouble scheduling this for this week. So I almost thought, if we can't get a time this week, I might just demo my Machiavelli paper and that'll be the podcast. So, next time one of us can't make it, I might just go and do a solo podcast where I talk about Machiavelli.
There you go, on Machiavelli. There are a few things that have been happening in the news. One that is just so ongoing. And it never gets off of my Facebook feed. It doesn't get off of whatever little of Twitter that I am on, and it definitely for sure has not gotten off my TikTok feed, and it drives me up the wall. And I know we've touched on this a little bit in our past couple episodes, but I figured this one I could literally go on my rant of rants. When it comes to this, but this whole don't say gay bill, which I have seen a lot of memes going around of people doing the Control F. And for those of you who don't know what Control F is, that is a find function. You hit Control F, you can find anything and everything. You type in a word and it'll tell you how many times that it pops up. Okay. And I've seen so many memes that have done the Control F on the bill and typed in "don't say gay," 0 searches come up. I think they type in the word "gay," 0 like 0 comes up. They type in the word "say," 0 comes up. Like it is crazy to see all this. But this "don't say gay" bill, and for those of us, I know we briefly touched on it a little bit, but it's pretty much just you are not allowed to teach. In the state of Florida, okay, this is in the state of Florida. The state of Florida, you are not allowed to instruct, as in create a curriculum, create things centered around sex of any orientation, mind you, any orientation. People don't realize that in the bill, but of any orientation in the bill, between the people deemed, I would say, like not of age, okay, and so it's definitely off limits for K through 3. Yes, age appropriate. And then after K through 3, it's deemed age appropriate. Okay. Now, I will say this. I'm not going to lie. I had a sex ed class when I was in middle school. Yeah. I was in the 6th grade. And I remember coming home and talking to my parents about the birds and the bees and understanding what the different STDs were and what it meant for birth control and how effective the pill was and how effective condoms were and things of that nature. And they said abstinence is the only thing that's 100% proof. I was like, okay. And I remember around the Christmas dinner talking to my mom and my dad, talking about all kinds of things, stuff that was highly inappropriate for the
For
table. But
Christmas dinner. I mean, I
for
guess I can
Christmas
kind of
dinner,
understand why that.
yes,
Okay, yeah, no, I get. I can see how that would come up on Christmas.
yes.
Okay.
I freaked my older sister out. She was like, "There's no reason why you should be even talking about this at the dinner table. I don't need to hear any of this or not." But I thought it was quite interesting having that conversation. But I mean, so there has been a level of in some education where sex has been taught. Okay, um, and I'm not opposed to that. But what they are saying, this "Don't Say Gay" bill, and what Disney World is starting to do, I say Disney is starting to do, or and has been doing for quite some time. If to me is abhorrent, at least for me. But that is the premise to everything that I'm about to go into. So, Amanda, your thoughts before I dive in and go on my lovely little soliloquies or rants.
Well, you want to rant, I want to rant. I think everyone's stupid. That's my first verdict is everyone is
Yes.
dumb. So the first here are the problems that I have with the bill is that I think there are fungible terms, and there are fungible terms that could be used to get people in trouble. For instance,
Yes.
instruct. What does that mean? Does that mean a teacher is talking to their students? Because it can be read that way. Age appropriate. Now, there people have gone back and forth about how no, it's not too vague. The language isn't too vague. I'm sorry, it's kind of vague when you say that this has to be age appropriate. And I like bills that are vague by design because it allows, it opens things up for interpretation. But usually that's for the purpose of greater liberty. And
Right.
we have to be careful when we've got kids about, how much do we want teachers taking over for parents. There's also an element of this bill that says, that teachers need to report to parents if students seem to be, questioning their gender or say that they're gay or whatever. And then there's language in there that says, but not if there's concerns about abuse. And so a lot of times you don't know. A lot of times you don't know if the kid's being abused. A lot of times you
Right.
have no idea what the family dynamic is. So that I think is just completely invalid. I very rarely will use vocabulary like this, but this bill does strike me as heteronormative because of the fact that it would not bar necessarily. It'd be much more difficult to read it as barring a female teacher from saying my boyfriend and I versus a female teacher from saying my girlfriend and I. So as for what this bill tries to prevent, I think it's incredibly noble because I think that there, at least in terms of the letter of what seems to be the spirit of the law, where we're trying to prevent these horror stories that we've heard of happening, where teachers just decide to give students different pronouns. And this speaks to me on a very personal level. Because I've talked with other girls especially who have had similar experiences. When I was between the ages of probably 6 and 9, I said I wanted to be a boy. I was adamant about that. I wanted to be a boy. And my parents, if they listen to this, which I always tell them not to, they will remember this very, very clearly. Like I wore boys' clothes.
Right.
I honestly, it was this idea that boys seem to have, they seem less precious. Like boys seem to have a lot more freedom, and it wasn't even social. It was just They were more free within themselves than girls were. I was still boy crazy. I still had crushes on boys. And I think now, I think back and I'm mortified because yes, I'm a moderately androgynous looking person. Yes, I like, if you put a gender inventory in front of me, I do score very highly masculine, and I believe those designations are dumb anyhow, and I don't buy into them. But I love having the fungibility of just being my own person. And I love the fact that I am a female.
Right.
And I am heterosexual. So it's I think back and I shudder at, what if I were a kid now and saying, I want to be a boy? We might have a very different story, and I wouldn't be happy if someone had said, well, Amanda, yes, I guess you are a boy, and we can work on affirming your gender and transitioning. All of this is to say, I'm I can see both sides of this.
Right.
But fundamentally, I don't think that this bill is the way to do it. I think you want transparency in the classroom. You want transparency between teachers and parents. And that's where people need to be turning their attention policy wise, not to bills that can get people in trouble for all the wrong reasons.
Right. Now, so one of my biggest frustrations with all of this, and just even with the just the controversy centered around this, is why on earth am I, a kindergarten teacher, a first grade teacher, or a second grade teacher, having any sort of conversation with a kid about who I lay with? Like that, I mean, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. It's not like kindergarten kids don't, like, they don't literally come up to you. It's not this concept of, oh, hey, hey, are you married to, like they don't ask those questions. They don't.
Kids are curious, though. I mean, you're right. They don't ask, "Are you
They are curious, right? They are curious, but they will say, hey, teacher, ma'am, hey, Mister Sir, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Did you have fun? Did you hang out with your friends? Whatnot?" That is it. When I tell you this, my wife teaches at an elementary school, been around a lot of kids. Okay, they do not even know the concept of all of these things unless they have been abused. That is the only way that they have any sort of 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 knowledge of what things are and how things should work and so forth. And I'll tell you this, there is no way on God's green earth that I think anybody in the second grade should be talked to about any sort of idea of what gender is, or this, that, or the other, or whether or not, well, do you have feelings for a girl? Do you have feelings for a boy?
Yeah, that's weird.
Like that is so weird. And then I see it, and I see it on videos all the time. Like, people are being interviewed on CNN talking about, like, hey, I've got to I'm afraid that I can't tell my kindergarten kids that, yes, me and my boyfriend were paddleboarding. Like, what does kindergarten need to know about you and your boyfriend? You could just say, hey, I went paddleboarding this weekend. Hey, what'd you do this week? Oh, I went paddleboarding. Like, that's it.
Right, but I mean, you should go on, finish.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you should be able to say, it's just like a female teacher would be able to say, I went paddleboarding with my boyfriend. I mean, that is not too disclose, that doesn't disclose too much. It's I went paddleboarding with my boyfriend. And then maybe then the kid who is curious asks, wait, but you're a boy or you're a man. Why do you have a boyfriend? And so I feel like there's this gray area where, the proper response, I think, would be, well, some men like men and have boyfriends, and some men have girlfriends, and that's the end of the discussion. And then if there's a follow-up, it's maybe, ask your parents about this. Your parents are the best to explain this to you. But yeah, that's
where we would differ on that. Yeah. I would say it's not even appropriate for you to even make the comment of hey, I was with my wife, or I was with my husband. Like even me as if I'm talking to a kindergartner, they say, hey, Mr. Coach, what'd you do this weekend? Like, if I went and did something that wasn't appropriate, I'd be like, oh, I just, I hung out with some friends, had some fun, played some video games and moved on. Like, talk to them in their level. They understand the concept of mom and dad and so forth, but their view on boyfriend, girlfriend, things of that nature, it's only because we introduce them to sexualized things. It's because we introduce them to that language in the classroom of, oh, hey, so like you're talking, hey, so you got a boyfriend? Hey, so you got a girlfriend? Like these are questions that teachers are asking. It's like, why are you asking that question in the first place? This isn't, and I think this is really my beef with with a lot of the education system. Is like, we're talking about things that we don't even need to be talking about with somebody who is in kindergarten, like with somebody who's in the first grade and the second grade, like third grade. Like I, as a teacher, I deal with high school students. Now, that dynamic is very different than somebody who is dealing with somebody who's 5, 6 years old. Like, when you're hanging out with My wife, she doesn't refer to me as her husband. She say, "Oh, that's Mr. Jones." Like, "Hey, that's Mr. Jones." "Oh, hey, Mr. Jonesy." Every time I walk in the classroom, "Oh, hey, Mr. Jonesy. Hey, Mr. Jonesy." Okay, cool. And they think that I'm related to every other male teacher in the school. Like, like their view on the world is very different. And I think a lot of times we just generally speaking, we think that these young minds are somewhat developed to think to view the world as we do, and they don't. Like, the questions that they ask are not the same questions we ask. When I was in the third grade, I just said, my teacher would come in and say, "Hey kids, did y'all have a good weekend?" "Oh yeah, we did have a great weekend." "Hey, what'd you guys do? What'd you guys do?" "Okay, hey." And it's like, "Hey teacher, what'd you do?" "Oh, you know what? I really didn't do a whole lot. Graded some papers, hung out." That's about it, because I know that there's a level of um of professionalism that I have to have in my job. So if I know that there are certain things that I should not be talking about kids with at all. And so as a kindergarten teacher, I know I probably shouldn't be talking about, hey, things that I did with my wife. Like, I probably shouldn't. Same way. I mean, even if I was, in the LGBTQ plus community, or whatever the case may be, like, I would have that same stance of, like, these aren't things that you talk about with somebody who is 5 years old, 6 years old, because that leads to hypersexualized kids when you talk about these things. And I'm a firm believer in thinking that, because I was on TikTok today and I got so mad. I think this is what really brought me down this rabbit hole. Like, okay, like, what do my conversations look like? They literally said, we need to start sexualizing kids at an early age. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
No.
There's no way that why in the world why would you want to take a 6-year-old whose mind is literally so innocent and so pure and talk about things like, that's weird to me. That is just weird. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, for anybody else, that is weird to me. Weird on the, like, borderline Jeffrey Epstein
No,
stuff.
that's a little sick. If you say, we need to start
Yes,
sexualizing kids, yeah, yeah.
like, it's crazy. And so if it is my job to teach a specific curriculum, then I make sure I hold to that, regardless of what. Like, I mean, my kids want to know about my wife and her pregnancy, and we have conversations, but I know how far they need to go, and I know when they need to stop. As a teacher, as a coach, I know that there are specific lines that I cannot cross due to professionalism, and it is and because of the fact that it is not my job to instill whoever I am teaching with whatever values that I have. And if I know that, then it's not my place to do that. Now, granted, like, I will bring up facts. Like, we just talked about, we literally just did a lesson on income tax. And did we bring up facts about, hey, how the government spends money? Yes, we did. Did we bring up facts about how things are going? Yes, we did. But that's in the curriculum, and that pertains to the class. It has nothing to do with anything else. And the moment we start allowing people in the system to say, hey, you know what? You can or cannot say this, or I mean, and granted, like, the school district will be sued and all this, and then probably this teacher will lose their job because the school district is being sued. But um, but the moment we start allowing people to just input whatever they want to in a system in which teachers say you have no right as a parent to do something, is an issue for me. It is 100% an issue, and that partly, and I know I work for the public education system, but that is why I'm all for blowing this sucker up. Like, I really am. I'm all for blowing it all up, And people all say, well, Maurice, well, Coach Jones, Mr. Jones, you won't have a job if we got rid of public education. And yes, I would. People would still want me to come teach their kids. Like, no, there's still value in a teacher. I just I wouldn't work for in public education. It'd be private, and it'd be a lot different or whatnot. But I would probably still teach the same class because everybody wants to learn about money. Everybody wants to do all these things. And so I think this is just exposing teachers who have an agenda, who want to push it on said kindergartners or first graders. And I think that's also exposing parents who do not want anything who try to keep their kids sheltered from everything, and not allowing them to have natural conversations at home. And so I mean, I agree with you that both sides, that I can see both sides. I can, but from my perspective, I think one side is hysterically wrong, and the other side is just getting it wrong in the sense of, like, you can't just be legislating all kinds of stuff because of things. You can't use the extension of the government to do your bidding because you are too lazy to do it yourself.
Yeah, and I mean,
Sorry.
I let you go it on. It's great. It has exposed, I think, a lot of weirdness, and I do remember being in preschool and kindergarten, and you were correct that kids don't think like adults. But I certainly did have a concept of how, I remember asking my preschool teacher why she wasn't married, and I did have because kids the kids have no filter, and I did have a concept of, men marry women generally, although it's, I'm thinking back, I fairly early did have a concept also that some men married men. I had my godfather was gay, and in fact he died of AIDS, and so there was that, you did know about that, and there was a way to teach kids about that in a more age appropriate way, even though when you have that language age appropriate, that that puts a damper on things when it's legal language. I heard an argument that was interesting, which is that kids have been cooped up for the past 2 years and starved of relation, and you do want to relate to teachers in the sense that teachers, I don't think, should feel like they can't say, I did this with my friend, I did this with my husband. Where it becomes a problem for me, obviously, is when you have teachers start to give a lesson about what different types of gender are to 4-year-olds. That is obviously inappropriate. But I agree with you that it's difficult to put that into legalese. And the real problem that we have here is that we've got people with agendas, and we have, rather than the agenda being let everyone be free to be who they are, whether that means that they're gay or straight or whatever gender designation they have. Rather than that, it's turned into not even allyship, but in certain areas it's encouraging anyone who seems to deviate from really rigid gender norms and saying, oh, if you wear a dress, you must be a girl. Fucker, no. I mean, if you wear a dress, you can be a boy. That's boys can wear dresses. Girls can play with trucks. That's what I think. Yes. Is that this weird. This has actually gone to a regression toward very, very antiquated gender norms. But anytime you see a boy doing something that a girl would do, you think, oh, they must be a girl. Right. I would appreciate if there were more fluidity and acknowledgement that people are their own people.
I saw something a while back, and it reminded me of where I firmly believe, and I may be stealing this from somebody, I can't remember. This is probably, I have zero original thoughts, so this is probably one of those that if whoever said this, I give credit to you if I remember where I got it from. But all of this probably started when, you remember, it was about a year ago or a little over a year ago, where this coalition of gay men, they made this video talking about, we're coming for your children.
Yeah, and it was the Los Angeles Gay Men's Chorus, in fact, and it was this parody. It was this joke because they were mocking the idea that people would come for their kid, but people took it seriously.
Right. Yeah. And and I remember a long time ago. I remember, so way back when you had, and I may have said this before, but when the whole legalized gay marriage thing was an issue, and conservatives were always talking about, well, if they do this, then they're coming for our kids, and then it becomes in the schools, and this, that, or the other. And of course, everybody was opposed to that. Was like, nah, man, you're crazy. There's no way they're coming for your kids. Nobody is that crazy. No, they're not coming for your kids, and they're not going to do that. It's just they're just legalizing gay marriage. Like that's just the issue. And here we are in April of 2020 discussing how certain teachers have agendas to want to teach kids about certain things. And I hate I hate proving people on the right correct.
Yeah.
But
I hate it so much.
it is 100% looking like they knew what they were talking about when they did this. Now, again, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not saying whether or not that was the right or wrong thing to do. I personally think government shouldn't be in marriage anyway, so it shouldn't really matter. Like that shouldn't be an issue. But I will say those conservatives way back then look like fortune tellers. They look like, you were proving the Alex Joneses of the world correct by doing things like this. And just instead of just trying to, stay in your lane and do what you're supposed to do and just, hey, leave everybody alone. It's the if you give a mouse a cookie thing and it just starts snowballing into other things. And I that's why I think like this is the right's trying to react to what they're doing. And granted, is it the correct way to act? I don't think so. But I think the correct way to act is to pull your kids out of public education.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think the best option is to just blow up this whole system, get rid of it. Corey DeAngelis, have the money follow the kid, and then move on. But here we are again, proving certain people right, and it's a bad look for everybody. It's a bad look for people in Florida. It's a bad look for people on the left who are saying this is a don't say gay bill. It's a bad look for people on the right who are supporting this because again, you are using the arm of the government to do things that are very vague and that can 100% come against you whenever you have a conversation as a parent and so forth. So it's all around a bad thing. But I will say this is really just people pushing back against certain things, and they're saying, "Hey, you're not coming for my kids,"
Yeah.
and like parody, "Hey, yeah, this, that, the other." But people in Florida took that stuff seriously. They said, "Oh, ain't no way! Like, ain't no way you're not coming for the new minds because we're trying to preserve where we are as far as things go." And it is just, whew, it is one big show, and it is frustrating. It's frustrating to watch. It's frustrating to be a part of. It's frustrating for me to get emails about. There's no way on God's green earth that I would subject my kids to anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man. And I get subliminal stuff because I do it all the time in my class, like all the time. But my goodness, the kids I'm teaching are 18 years old, 17 years old. They're not 5 and 6.
Yeah. And the last thing in general,
of age. Go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
The last thing in general that teachers need, I mean, barring exceptions, is to be thinking, oh, I can't say this because the government will get mad, or I shouldn't say that.
Right.
I hate that. I hate thinking about teachers going through that. I hate thinking about the mandatory webinars they're going to have to sit through about what they can and can't. I hate it so much.
Yeah.
I hate it so much.
It's rough. It is rough. But anyways, all this legislation and stuff. Now, speaking of legislation, I don't know. I read this article on April Fool's Day, and I thought this was a joke. Okay. But then when I actually read it, I was like, okay, it is a joke. The headline is definitely clickbait. But I will say this. According to sources, the United States House of Representatives, voted. This article says to federally decriminalize marijuana. Okay, so April Fools. I thought it was April Fool's joke because there's no way. Then I read it. I was like, oh no, they did. Then I did a little bit more research and was like, they're serious about some things. Okay, now for those of you who think that marijuana is going to be coming off of this list, that you can smoke whatever you want to smoke whenever you want to do it, I hate to inform you, hate to be the bearer of bad news. That is not at all what this bill does. Not at all. What it does, at least in its current state, it is, I think it's HR 5657. In its current state, it just establishes a new separate registration process to facilitate medical marijuana research. Okay.
Oh boy, the more things that we have to pay for.
That's exactly.
Oh boy.
Exactly. But there is a new way to promote that a new way for them to tax the sale of this marijuana or whatnot. So it'll pay for itself in like never. You know,
it's another one of those. We're going to study whether we should tax this thing. We're going to tax you to study whether we should tax something else. Things we just had one of those in California.
Right.
About gas.
Oh, fun. But I mean, it is interesting. So it's allowing it will allow for people of like the VA and things of that nature to actually be prescribed this something for people who have PTSD and things of that nature. But they have to fit a specific criteria, and they have to fall into this specific box in order for you to actually be, according to this bill in its current state, in order for you to qualify, you have to be in a specific box in order to be able to be prescribed medicinal marijuana for said research use.
Yeah. I usually recuse myself from libertarian discussions on weed because I acknowledge that I cannot come to this on libertarian principles, so I just have to back out. So first of all, I hate weed. I hate it from like a Randian perspective, and I don't even like Ayn Rand, but I hate it from this Randian. This is the only time like I want people to be doing and building and making things, and I want people to be innovating. And so I don't like any downers and any drug that like usually, and everyone's going to come at me and be like, oh, but it helps you write great music and stuff. First of all, the Beatles were crap. Okay. Traitor to my generation. I don't care. They didn't have good songs. Maybe if they hadn't smoked the devil's herb, they would have had better songs. Second, I can't stand the smell. It's de facto legal everywhere I've ever lived. And I hate just walking anywhere and getting just this waft of what makes me feel like I'm going to puke. So maybe if someone can take out the smell, whichever one thinks, oh, it's so great, that's what makes good, make it only smell for you. Why can't we do that? That's effectively what vaping does. Can we have a vaping, and then we can move toward, there's also just no regulation of, driving under the influence with marijuana. Which is troublesome. But this is really so we can get tax revenue from weed.
Yes.
And to that I say, then why don't we just do this for all drugs, including prescription drugs? And then we can get all this wonderful tax revenue from street drugs and do it for uppers. Pick one an upper, and not caffeine, something stronger. Pick an upper, and so we can have narcotic equity. So we can legalize a downer and an upper. I can send people a list of some uppers that I think a categorical list, an itemized list of uppers that I would like to see legalized in order, and maybe we can talk about it. It'd be a nice compromise. So this is why I recuse myself from these discussions.
Now, I am not a
toker
person who pretty much I don't partake in any of this. I am honestly, for me being a libertarian, I'm pretty straight edge. I will say that. I think I partake in an adult beverage every now and again, but that's really about it. Like, as far as I'm not as straight edge as other libertarians, but that I know, like the Eric DeJuly's of the world. But I mean, he does everything that I do except for he's one step further, as in he doesn't drink, but I do, and it is what it is. Like, it's fine, but I'm of the mindset of, if you're trying to smoke, do you? I don't, but I'm like you. I don't want to smell it.
Please don't let me smell it.
It is when the smell makes me want to throw up.
Yeah, it really does. See, I'm not the only person.
Gives me a headache. Yes, gives me a headache. Makes me want to throw up. Like, it's frustrating to me. It is very frustrating to me, and I cannot stand to be around it.
Yeah.
That being said, I will say, like, hey, legalize, decriminalize. I think there's a difference between the two. Okay, but hey, if the government wants to say smoking a plant does not put you in jail for 30 years, then I'm okay with that. If this is the start of that, then I'm like, okay, whatever you got to do to get there, please get there. Now, don't let it, the moment that it starts to hurt me is the moment that I have an issue with it. Of, hey, maybe you need not to be, don't do be and drive, as the billboards like to say in Oregon, things of that nature. But I just, and I think a lot of times people would all people would always tell me to say, well, it's not as bad as drinking. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. But at least in drinking, I'm in my house and I'm not getting behind the wheel, and I am, and for me, I'm still productive, and I'm not like getting out here getting sloshed and wasted and things of that nature. I go have my few sips of alcohol, adult beverages, hang out with some friends or whatnot, not drunk, handle what I do, wake up the next morning, and I'm just as productive. Like, I'm hanging out with people regardless, so it's not going to change the fact. But I always get well, it just doesn't do this. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm not going to do it. I will not partake in it. It's not anything that my head wants to do, because I can't, I don't, it smells like a skunk.
It smells worse than a skunk. I would rather have a skunk.
So bad.
I'd rather smoke skunk fumes. Literal skunk fumes. No, just like, yeah. No, really.
Yeah, no, I couldn't do it.
No, definitely no jail time for, I would say no jail time for any drug possession, any drug
100%.
Where you have a problem, where it gets to be a problem is when you have, parents who are using drugs and then abusing or neglecting their children.
Correct.
Maybe you have you have an amplified sentence if it's, whatever.
Right.
But definitely no jail time. Again, the Randy in me is like, well, let's have a fine, fine, community service, something like that. That's how you get your government revenue, but none of this jail time nonsense is dumb. It's so dumb.
But I am interested to see where this goes, how there's supposedly a bill in the Senate that is very similar to this. But it passed it passed, like, let me look at the numbers here. I want to say it was like 375 or 370 something to like 74. Like, yeah. It was, and I had to take a look to see if some of my favorites voted yay or nay for the bill or whatnot. I was like, oh, okay, all right, like, oh, okay, sounds good. It was good. So it was very interesting to kind of read through, because again, I thought it was April Fool's joke, and I was like, oh, what, they about to make it happen? Like, all right, cool. And of course, I was with some of my friends who were pretty as straight edge as I am or whatnot, and they were like, I was like, you guys probably don't like the view that I have on it, but they're like, no, we completely agree. I was like, oh, okay, sounds good. Now, but I like you do want a productive society. Like, I want a productive society. I just don't want anybody to be penalized for not being productive. Penalized in the sense of monetarily because they decide not to be productive. Now, if they're penalized by the fact of they're not as wealthy as somebody, then that's on you. If they're penalized by they're not as productive, so they don't have the great things in life that they want to have, then okay. But I do want a productive society. And you know what? If people in a small little housing association want to say, hey, look, like, our areas want to be clear. We like the 12 houses here, we don't allow no smoking, no smoking of the marijuanas or whatnot, then let them do that. Mm-hmm. Then people who want to smoke in the marijuana, they go somewhere else and they do that. But again, we're leaving it up to individuals in that sense, and not the federal government, who honestly is been doing themselves a disservice by putting this on the on the list of, I think it was like, what level is it? Like level 1 or whatever the case.
They're controlled substances. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's whatever the highest form it is, this is on that. And so this prevents them from doing studies to see how smoking has allowed people to better themselves as far as things. Kind of take a step back. Why do you think we have like CBD oil now? Like, it's because you had states who were like, you know what? Let's start doing some research and let's see if there's anything in marijuana that allows for soothing thing or whatnot. Because you would have NFL athletes who would smoke in order to recover faster, because it would allow their body, like for them, it would allow their body to recover faster. Now, again, it's not the same for everybody. Some people are productive, some people are not. What's that?
I don't trust that. I don't trust that CBD oil. So I want it anywhere near. I know they sell it. I know this is supposed to be fine. I don't want it. I don't want it.
Oh, I'm not smoking it. I'm not smoking it.
I don't want it on my skin. I don't want it in my
house. Y'all can keep that devil's lettuce over there. Don't bring none of that over here.
No,
don't bring none of that over here. So, but yeah, I mean, it is interesting. But another thing that I thought was an April Fool's joke, even though it didn't fall on April Fool's, here recently, Elon Musk has been on Twitter, and this has been going on since March. I think he came up with a poll March 25th, and said, "Do you guys feel like Twitter is a free speech platform?" And he said, and he cautioned people on how to respond to this poll, because he said there are major implications from this poll. And I want to say it came out to like 71% of people said no, and then 29 said yes, or so forth. And then April 2nd? No, it couldn't have been the 2nd. It was over this weekend, I want to say.
Yeah, it was very recently.
Over this weekend. Elon Musk gets 9.5% ownership in Twitter. And I mean, Twitter stocks soar. They absolutely 100% soar. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, is this about to be a good mix-up? And then you're like, okay, like let's see, because reports coming out, he's going to have a passive ownership role like this. I mean, and he, like 9.5%, I think makes him like the biggest owner of shares within Twitter. I think like Jack Dorsey only has like 2.5%. So in comparison to those, like it's like okay, like he may be able to do a little something. I mean, 9.5%. Like if you're still minority when it comes to things. But
what would he do?
He can still do some work.
You probably thought about this more than I have. What would he do? And what is the something that he would?
See, that's what it was interesting. But then when you find out that he is quickly now on the board of Twitter, he's on their board of directors, you're kind of like, oh, like, and again, there's only one man in the board, but if you're the wealthiest man in the world, you're a billionaire, and you literally, and you're saying, and like he tweeted out, I'm interested because the CEO tweeted like, "Hey, we're excited to have Elon Musk on our board of directors. It's interesting to see what his thoughts are." And he tweeted, he said, "I'm happy to be a part of the new and improvements that are coming to Twitter or whatnot." It was like, okay. And so I don't necessarily know what can come of this. All of this could just be smoke, and nothing can come of it. And he's just building his wealth in different ways, and he sees that Twitter can help him in the long run of things. I mean, because when you buy 9.5% of something of a company, that's not any short-term stuff. That is definitely long-term ownership and so forth. So if it's interesting to see, like, if something were to come of this, like, let's say Twitter for the longest time, wouldn't allow you to retweet anything that was deemed medical misinformation or, yeah. So that, or this whole people who are banned off of Twitter because of said free speech that Elon Musk's the same thing that he gets in trouble for, or when you had them deleting the New York Post, their whole Twitter account was suspended for 24 hours, and so you have all these issues, and it's interesting to think that how would an Elon Musk kind of operate in this, and it's you don't see billionaires in this specific realm with the views that Elon Musk has. Now, I do see you see a lot who are maybe they're kind of behind the scenes, but most of the billionaires who you see, they're always supportive of oh my gosh, like well we need this, and you get the Bill Gates of the world, you get the Jeff Bezos who comes out and says outspoken things of heck his Amazon servers deplatformed Parler when they had Trump on there, like after Trump was kicked off of Twitter. So you have all these billionaires who on the surface would seem like think very differently than Elon Musk. And then so to have him in this same like ring of now he's a big owner of Twitter. Of course you have conservatives praising this, but it's like it's interesting to see like, well, what can happen of this? Best case scenario, Twitter just becomes this free for all libertarian thing. Everybody can say whatever they want and do whatever they want. Okay, and by that I mean stuff that is appropriate. Let's say I mean because yeah, exactly, age appropriate. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's best case scenario, or best case, or even better scenario. This whole thing just blows up and Twitter just goes under. Like that's how I view it too. Because I think Twitter was on the outs before Donald Trump. Like
Facebook
Twitter was like, well, no, but Twitter was like on the fringe of being obsolete. Like people not talking about it. Donald Trump becomes president, gets on Twitter and starts saving it. And now everybody's back on Twitter again. Like, oh, we got to be back on Twitter. Got to be back on Twitter kind of thing. To where now it's this, okay, hey, you get news faster on Twitter than you do pretty much on anything else or whatnot. So it was on the way out. And so I it'll be interesting to see what Elon Musk actually does from this. If he's just doing this actually for his own gain, which is probably the case. Like he doesn't do it. Nobody drops that kind of cash. Nobody drops $3 billion in cash on a company without gain for themselves or whatnot. So I don't know exactly what he'll do, but I think there was he tweeted something about, hey, how would you guys like some other type of button on Twitter? And everybody's like, oh yeah. So I think at this point he's kind of trolling, but it'll be interesting to see in the next few months like what actually happens.
I mean, he's going to be a sort of Damocles, regardless, right? I mean, he's gonna be like, we cannot make Elon Musk angry, which is just funny. It is funny to me.
Yes.
I don't want Twitter to die because I'm trying to build my brand on Twitter. What I really want to see is I want to see something that isn't TikTok do what TikTok does, because it can't do TikTok because of the Chinese Communist Party, because it's controlled by it's run by the Chinese communists. So I'm maybe if we have a TikTok function built into Twitter, I don't know. Elon Musk
Instagram is
no, go on.
Instagram is picking up on that a little bit. It's stealing from TikTok with their reels, but it's not the same. It's not the same. It's all outdated stuff. That's because it's Facebook trying to copy everybody in the metaverse. But it'll be. I heard somebody said Elon Musk is now my new favorite African American. I got a chuckle out of that. I really did.
Like the wealthiest man in the world is an African American.
Yes, go figure. And they're like, oh, well, he's not really African American. No, the man is, but it is. But exactly, like, believe it or not, he's more African American than yours truly. And in case you guys didn't know out there in listener land, I am a black man. That's why I'm called the Notorious BLG, the Notorious Black Liberty Guy. So that's what it is. But it's going to be, I think, if Elon can do some of the things that Elon always talks about, I think Twitter will become a new, and I hate using the term safe space, but I think it'll actually turn into a place where you can actually tweet things again and do what you're supposed to do. I will say though, it is probably going to expose a lot of people, as this Don't Say Gay bill does, as this marijuana legalization does. As far as it's going to expose people in the sense of like, can they truly handle themselves with somebody of truly like of like, and not very much differing opinions, but like of differing opinions, can they coexist on the same platform, or do you truly want to see your opposition muted? And in the terms of in the words of Eric July, the people who want you dead, like, do they really like it'll really expose people for people who really want opposite viewpoints dead. It'll really expose them for what they are and for the frauds that they are and so forth. So it'll be interesting. I'll be looking at it for the next couple of months just to see what happens as far as Twitter. I may actually be on Twitter a whole lot more now that all this is taken off. So it is going to be interesting. It is going to be interesting.
You absolutely should.
But because of Elon Musk and his $3 billion, I guarantee that there's some people out there trying to say we got to tax his unrealized capital gains that he's going to get from Twitter, because ever since he bought Twitter stock, everything is, I think the Twitter value has gone up like 2% or so, which those y'all, that's a lot. Like, that's a huge percentage in the matter of a day, 2 days. 2% is a huge amount. So, but according to everybody out there, they want to tax his unrealized capital gains, which makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, so there's this new, so first of all, it's being called a billionaire income tax, which is dumb because it would also affect people with more than $500 million. So that's not a billionaire. Okay, you got $500 million worth of not a billionaire to cover until this becomes a billionaire income tax. It's also not an income tax. Do you know why? Because income means money that comes in. This not billionaire, not income tax would tax people whose overall net worth is more than $500 million, which includes unrealized capital gains. So I go back to this analogy all the time. That is me going by your field and taxing you and taking the bread that you haven't produced. I am taxing the loaves of bread that you don't have because you just planted the grain and you don't even know if there's going to be a harvest. All right. So there is no such thing. You can't define income to include money that hasn't come in. And yet, the verbiage around this bill that's marketing it is all about how multimillionaires only pay 8% of their income. They don't. They don't pay 8% of their income. They pay 8% of their overall wealth as valued at that specific moment. Their income, they're paying close to 50. Are they paying 50 now? Are they paying about 50?
No, I think the highest is 37.
Okay.
I think the highest is 37.
All right. So they're paying those rates.
They're paying a lot.
They're paying a lot. And even if, so you can have various measures of tax avoidance that doesn't get you to 8%. The 8% figure that's quoted on the White House's site is misinformation. That's a lie. They don't pay 8%.
That needs to be flagged on Twitter.
They don't pay 8% of their income. Words mean things, okay? In this case, income, it's come in. I don't know. It's in the word. I feel like I'm doing a textual analysis. It's unrealized capital gains are not income, as anyone who invested in crypto last year knows. Exactly. So, I mean, do you get a refund for capital losses? For unrealized capital losses? Because if so, you know what I can do, or what a 500 millionaire can do, is they can just invest in a stock that's about to tank right before tax day, and they get don't they get a rebate? They get a rebate. So this will also, by the way, this will influence your 401k. I wrote a piece about this.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
I wrote a piece about how this hurts the little guy. Actually, it was prophetic because it was about a year ago on goodmorningliberty.us. I think it was called Capital Pains. It was a great little piece. One of my shorter ones too. But it basically played through this scenario because the proposal was being touted at the time. It's almost exactly a year ago. And I said, look, this is going to, first of all, it's going to punish the poor, because people who are in, below average income are most likely to have generational wealth, and most likely to have wealth that's stored in other assets.
Yep.
The other thing is that, again, yes, it's going to hurt your 401k, because these market whales are not going to invest as much. And when they don't invest as much, guess what happens? You're bidding down a price. And when you're bidding down a price, guess what happens? There's this chill across the market. And yes, that affects your 401k. So the billionaires that aren't really billionaires are going to be just fine. Yep. But it's going to be us who are not going to be okay. The end.
I just I think excuse me, the mere fact that people understand, if you tax something, you get less of it, right? Follow me here, okay?
Yeah.
If I tax something, I get less of it.
Yeah.
So if I tax billionaires, do you think I'm going to wind up with more billionaires? Like, if I tax unrealized capital gains, do you think at some point those unrealized capital gains are going to go down? They're going to decrease, and they're going to decrease and continue to decrease to a point to where, like you said, you and wealthy people know how to get around things. They do. People don't remember. I guess people just have this, they study revisionist history and understanding that the original income taxes was not on everybody. It was on wealthy people.
And it was unconstitutional then too.
Exactly, 100%. But then all of a sudden, your wealthy people are trying to figure out ways around it. So what do? They find ways around it. And so now the government's like, well, we can't make enough money with them doing this, so we have to tax everybody now at specific rates. And then you get people who say, oh, well, what about when the marginal tax rate was like 73% at one point? It's like, yeah, it was. But do you understand what their actual average tax rates were back then? It wasn't 73%. That's not how things were. There's just all this whole revisionist history. But understanding that if I continue to tax wealth, I'm going to get less of it. People are going to move. You're not going to affect the wealthy as much as you think you are. You are going to affect the people who you say you're not going to affect. You want to know why? Because everything just gets passed on. The wealthy will find some way around this specific thing, whether that's storing wealth in some other place to where it's not taxed as high, as far as they've realized the stock market is not a viable option for anything. And so you get companies who buy back most of their stock. They buy back most of their stock. They're no longer publicly traded. They do all these things. Your 401ks are shot. Your IRAs are shot. Any sort of investment tools that use vehicles within the stock market are shot. So then you create this sudden flood of somewhere else. Let's say, I don't know, real estate. Okay. And so then people want to start putting their retirements in real estate and in land and things because land typically appreciates. You don't depreciate land from an accounting's perspective. You have all these things. And then all of a sudden that turns around and you're just like, oh, well, now we have no wealth tax in the unrealized capital gains, but we have these property taxes. But there are ways around the property tax because all this is farmland, and it becomes so convoluted, and it ends up hurting people because now the people who need a house to buy can no longer afford to buy them because the demand for them is so high. The price continues to go up, and then you're now in a housing shortage for the people who need houses. Like it just creates this huge domino effect that people fail to realize, and it's just so frustrating. And I'm like, and I don't know, maybe it's me or maybe it's Maybelline. I don't know, but what I will say is this: I don't understand why people do not think that far ahead. They don't. It is frustrating. It is. Maybe I'm just some forward thinker. I am just like ahead of my time. I'm just awesome free thinker, Maurice Jones, who just thinks 10 years into the future, who predicted the inflation that was going to happen that we're currently under, who predicted how governments would react when it came to COVID-19, who predicted all this and that. I don't know.
Nostradamus.
Maybe I'm just ahead of my time. Nostradamus right here. Just throwing that out there. Notorious Nostradamus BLG. That's what I'm going to start calling myself.
Yeah. No, and it's I love fun facts about tax revenue. So yeah, the revenue from this not billionaire, not income tax would, I think, fund the government for a few hours. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, absent this is a fact that I love whipping out, partly because I love space. Elon Musk. So Elon Musk will pay that if tax dollars were miles, we're not talking light years, miles. If tax dollars were miles, Elon Musk would pay enough in taxes this year to travel to Ultima Thule, aka Arakoth, and back. Those are two rocks that love colliding at the very, very advent of our solar system. So basically, like it's the birth of our solar system. They're frozen in space and time. It's past Pluto. He would be able to travel there and back and still have money for a little bit of, or sorry, not still have money. The government would still have money for a little bit of a return trip.
Yes.
Okay, that's the amount that we're talking about, independent of this new monstrosity. But that's okay because you make a great point that when the government starts to tax one thing, then people obviously are they're self-preserving. They're going to try to move their assets around. And then the government has to tax more things, and now the government has to tax you for studies about what can be taxed. So it's infinite regress, ladies and gentlemen.
It happens. But hey, that's the government for you. But that'll wrap it up for us today. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. I know I don't necessarily look at the camera all the time, but I'm so thankful for you for watching us out there on the YouTubes. Please, please, please subscribe to our podcast here on Apple Podcasts, whether it's on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. We know we are worth every single bit of that 5 stars. I assure you we are. Please, please, please follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter for however long Twitter is up, thanks to Elon Musk, because he could sell his 9.5% shares tomorrow and completely plummet the company. But I don't think he'll do that. That's stupid on his part. But follow us on Twitter at Civil Discord Pod. Follow us. So that is us, a Civil Discord Pod. You can follow Amanda as well as Ajax the Griff. Follow us on Instagram at Civil Discord Podcast, or call me Maurice. That is where I post most of my personal stuff. You can see me and my lovely wife. You can see our lovely little baby announcement, things of that nature. When we find out the gender, yes, we find out whether we're having a boy or a girl. We are going to announce that on the Instagrams for the world to see and so forth. So again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please leave us some comments on those videos out there and do all of that. Please do all of that. We'll be back again with another episode of Civil Discord, your weekly dose of radical curiosity. Until then, y'all be easy.
And stay fierce.